The space station Corin 7 floated like a jewel among the stars. It was known as a place where dozens of species gathered to trade goods, share knowledge, and build trust. To humans, it was one of the safest stations for cultural exchange. Families often came here not only for research, but also to see the great market halls filled with lights, voices, and wonders from across the galaxy. Dr. Marcus Hale, a human scientist, walked beside his wife, Elena, and their 7-year-old daughter, Clara. The little girl's eyes sparkled with excitement as she looked at glowing fabrics, jars of alien fruits, and miniature robots dancing in the air. For her, the station was a playground of endless fascination. Among the many alien species in the crowd were the Veyari. They were small, bird-like beings with soft feathers and delicate hands. Most taller races ignored them. The Veyari did not have powerful armies or advanced fleets. They were gentle artisans and healers, often working quietly at the edge of attention. On this day, a small group of Veyari merchants had a stall of handmade crystal carvings that shimmered like frozen rainbows. Clara ran up to them with delight. She pressed her small hands against the table, staring at the glowing shapes. The Veyari smiled warmly at her curiosity. One of them, with bright silver feathers, bent low and offered her a little crystal bird as a gift. Clara laughed, the sound drawing smiles even from passing strangers. But joy rarely lasts long in the wide galaxy. Without warning, alarms blared across the station. A group of raiders stormed the market. They were tall, armored, and brutal, moving quickly through the crowd. Shouts filled the air as vendors closed stalls and families fled in panic. The raiders had chosen their target, the humans. To strike at Earth's people was to earn wealth and status in the darker corners of space. Dr. Hale shouted for Clara and Elena to run. The crowd pushed and scattered, and in the confusion, Clara tripped near the Veyari stall. The child fell to the ground, her small crystal bird clattering beside her. A raider spotted her, his weapon raised. Time seemed to freeze. The little girl's wide eyes filled with fear, and then before anyone else could move, the Veyari acted. The silver-feathered one darted forward, spreading his wings. He stood between Clara and the raider, his fragile body a shield. Another Veyari pulled Clara into their arms, protecting her as if she were their own hatchling. The raider sneered and aimed his weapon again, but the Veyari did not back down. With shaking hands, they raised simple tools from their stall, nothing more than carving instruments, yet they stood firm. The marketplace gasped. A species often dismissed as weak had thrown themselves into danger for a child not their own. The raider fired. The silver-feathered Veyari cried out, feathers scattering as he fell. Still, he had delayed the attack long enough. Security drones of the station arrived, firing stun blasts at the raiders. The attackers, surprised by the resistance, retreated into the shadows of the station, leaving behind smoke and chaos. When the danger passed, Clara was still clutched tightly in the arms of the Veyari. She was safe, though shaken. Dr. Hale and Elena rushed forward, tears streaming down their faces as they held their daughter. Clara whispered, "They saved me," pointing to the small feathered figures around her. The silver-feathered Veyari, wounded but alive, looked up at the human family. "A child must be protected," he said softly in broken human speech. "It is the way of life." Dr. Hale grasped his hand firmly. In that moment, words were not enough. Humanity's fierce love for its children had found an echo in another species. Other humans and aliens gathered, whispering about what had just happened. Someone had recorded the entire scene on their holo device. The image of small, fragile beings protecting a human child spread faster than light itself. Within hours, the story would reach Earth. For now, though, the Hales escorted the injured Veyari to the station's medical bay. Clara refused to let go of the crystal bird, holding it tightly as a reminder of the ones who had saved her. Far away, beyond the bright windows of Corin 7, the stars waited silently. None could know how this single act of courage would change the balance of power across the galaxy, but one thing was certain. Humanity never forgot those who protected their young, and soon, the Veyari would discover just how far humans were willing to go to repay such a debt. The announcement from Earth spread across the galaxy like a storm. Humanity had declared the Veyari a protected species, placing them under the shield of Earth itself. For many, it was a shocking move. Never before had humans extended their protection beyond their own colonies or allies. In the Galactic Council chamber, voices clashed. Some alien leaders shouted that humans were claiming authority they did not have. Others argued that it was reckless to tie their fate to such a fragile race. But the human delegation remained calm. They repeated one message. The Veyari defended a human child when others did not. For that act, they are now our family, and we protect our family. The words echoed through the halls. Even those who disagreed could not dismiss the weight behind them. Back on Earth, the Veyari were invited as honored guests. A small group, including Alaris, traveled to the blue world that humans called home. For the Veyari, it was overwhelming. Towering cities stretched into the clouds, ships flew across the skies, and oceans sparkled with life. They had never seen a world so vast and powerful. Clara and her parents welcomed them personally. To her, they were no longer strangers. They were friends. She held Alaris's hand as they walked through gardens outside the council building. "Don't be afraid," she told him with a smile. "Everyone here wants to meet you." But Alaris and his companions still felt uncertain. Their people had always been quiet, avoiding conflict, building art and healing tools rather than weapons. Now they were at the center of galactic attention, with both honor and danger pressing on them. During the official ceremony, President Liang of Earth spoke before a vast crowd. "We humans are known to defend our own," he declared. "But courage recognizes no borders. The Veyari showed that courage belongs to them as much as to us. We will not forget, and we will not allow them to face enemies alone." The announcement drew cheers from human citizens, but it also carried a warning to hostile ears. Among those listening were the raiders who had attacked Corinne 7. They boiled with rage. To them, the Veyari were nothing more than weak prey, and now humans had turned them into symbols of defiance. In hidden stations, raider captains made plans. They would strike at a Veyari colony, a quiet world far from Earth's reach. If they crushed the Veyari quickly, perhaps humanity would hesitate to respond. They believed humans were strong, yes, but also slow, weighed down by debate and diplomacy. They did not understand the depth of human resolve. When intelligence reached Earth about the threat, human fleets were already preparing. Admiral Solon, a veteran commander, addressed his officers. "This is no longer about defense alone. It is about honor. If the Veyari fall while under our protection, then humanity itself will lose face. We move quickly and we strike hard." Meanwhile, the Veyari Council debated among themselves. Some were frightened. They had never asked for protection. Was it wise to stand beside a giant like humanity? Others argued that they could not walk away. "We chose to save a child," Alaris said. "That choice has bound us to them. We cannot undo it, and I do not wish to. To stand with humans is dangerous, yes, but it is also right." Clara, unaware of the heavy debates, gave Alaris drawings she had made. Humans and Veyari standing side by side under the same sun. He kept them close, reminders of why all of this had begun. As fleets prepared in orbit and messages flew between worlds, ordinary humans and Veyari began to form bonds. Scientists exchanged ideas. Children from both species sent letters of friendship across the stars. What had started as one act of courage was now growing into something larger, a partnership neither side had expected. But danger was near. Raider ships moved through dark space, their weapons armed, their leaders hungry for revenge. They thought themselves hunters, but they were walking into the gaze of humanity. In the quiet hours before battle, Admiral Solon stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked out at the stars. "They think we will hesitate," he said softly. "But humanity never hesitates when family is in danger." And across the galaxy, the Veyari prepared themselves in their own way. They were not soldiers, but they would not hide. Inspired by humans, they began readying their small ships, weak in weapons but strong in spirit. They would stand beside their protectors no matter the cost. The stage was set. Soon the galaxy would see whether this new bond of courage and loyalty could withstand the fire of war. The raider fleet emerged from the shadow of a gas giant, dark ships glinting faintly in the distant starlight. Their target was a small Veyari colony on the edge of a quiet system. To the raiders, it seemed the perfect place to strike, a vulnerable species far from human fleets, unprotected by politics or fleets of war. But they had miscalculated. Humanity had already prepared for this day. Human starships, sleek and powerful, appeared from jump gates faster than the raiders could track. Sensors detected the attackers before they even reached the colony. Messages from Earth declared, Any harm to the Veyari will be treated as harm to humanity. Withdraw or face the consequences. The raiders laughed. Empty threats from a distant world, one captain sneered. They will not risk war over feathered insects. They were wrong. Admiral Solon gave the order, and the human fleet moved with precision. The ships split into formations, surrounding the Veyari world to prevent any escape. Yet there was no intent to destroy. Their purpose was clear: defend the Veyari, show their presence, and warn the raiders that they would not tolerate harm. In orbit above the colony, Ilaris and other Veyari pilots prepared their small ships. Though lightly armed, they were ready to join the fight. Humans had given them training, shared tactics, and given hope. For the first time, they felt they were not alone. They could stand and fight, inspired by those who had sworn to protect them. The battle began with the raiders firing warning shots. The Veyari dodged and weaved, relying on their agility. Human ships responded, intercepting missiles and disabling raider ships without destroying them, showing controlled strength. It was a display meant to warn, to protect, not to annihilate. Clara watched from a human command ship, wide-eyed. The Veyari pilots maneuvered bravely, even laughing with each other as they dodged attacks. "They are amazing," she said quietly to Dr. Hale. "Just like they saved me." Dr. Hale nodded. "Bravery is not about size or strength," he said. "It's about heart." The raiders pressed harder, trying to break through the lines. Their weapons hit some Veyari ships, and small fires broke out on a few. But humans moved fast, repairing, shielding, and countering each strike. The coordination was unlike anything the raiders had ever faced. Every time a Veyari ship was in danger, human pilots would move in to protect them. Ilaris found himself flying beside human fighter ships for the first time. They were enormous compared to his small craft, yet they moved as one, covering his blind spots, guiding him and giving him confidence. For the Veyari, who had never known war, it was a revelation. Humans were not only strong, they fought for others, not only themselves. Minutes turned into hours. The raiders, frustrated and demoralized, began to retreat. They had underestimated the bond between humans and Veyari, the courage that had sparked from a single act of protection. Ilaris and his companions cheered as the last raider ships disappeared into the darkness. The colony below erupted in celebration. Veyari families ran outside, hugging one another and waving to the human ships above. Clara waved too, holding her crystal bird high. "We did it!" she shouted. "We saved them together." Admiral Solon's voice echoed through the communication channels. "The Veyari are safe. Remember this day. Courage and loyalty are stronger than fear." For the Veyari, it was a moment of awakening. They had always lived quietly, believing that their smallness made them weak. Now they understood that true strength was not measured by size, weaponry, or numbers. It was measured by heart and the courage to act for what is right. Ilaris looked at the human fleet, his eyes shining. "We thought we were fragile," he said softly to one of his pilots, "but with them beside us we can face anything." On Earth, messages poured in. Children drew pictures of humans and Veyari fighting together. Leaders of other species watched quietly, realizing that humanity had not only defended a child, but had created an example of loyalty that might change the galaxy forever. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of space, the defeated raiders retreated to rethink their arrogance. They had faced something greater than mere weapons. They had faced a species that would fight for others, a species whose courage inspired allies beyond their expectations. The battle was over, but the bond it created was eternal. Humans had shown that protecting another species was not just a moral choice, it was a declaration of honor. The Veyari, once overlooked and dismissed, now stood proud, their courage recognized, their trust in humans absolute. Clara held her crystal bird tightly, smiling. She did not yet know the future, but she knew one thing. Together, humans and Veyari could face the stars, unafraid of the darkness that might come. And across the galaxy, the legend grew of a tiny feathered species and a single child, whose courage and protection had changed everything. The stars shone brightly above the Veyari homeworld, now peaceful and alive with renewed hope. The battle had ended, the raiders were gone, and the human fleet had returned to orbit above Earth, their mission complete. Yet for the Veyari, this was only the beginning. They were no longer a species overlooked by the galaxy. They were a people honored, protected, and recognized. Alaris stood atop a cliff looking out over the sprawling crystal cities of his people. The wind rustled his silver feathers and he thought of Clara, the human child whose life had begun the chain of events that changed everything. It seemed impossible that one small child could inspire such courage, such loyalty, and such change across the stars. Clara herself had come with Dr. Hale and Elena to witness the rebuilding of the colony. She ran freely among the Veyari children, laughing, playing, and showing them her drawings of humans and Veyari standing together. For her, this was no longer a story of fear or danger. It was a story of friendship, trust, and bravery. The Veyari Council gathered later in the day. Leaders who had once questioned the wisdom of protecting humans now stood with pride, discussing plans to strengthen their society. They realized that while humans had given them protection, they themselves had discovered strength within. They could fight when necessary, create alliances, and defend their people without fear. Courage, they understood, came in many forms. In a grand ceremony broadcast across the galaxy, President Liang of Earth spoke once more. "Today, we celebrate the bond between two species," he said, his voice echoing through the communication channels of countless worlds. The Veyari acted with courage when no one else would. Humanity responds not because we are obligated, but because bravery deserves recognition and loyalty deserves protection. From this day forward, no Veyari shall face danger alone. We are bound together by respect, by trust, and by the courage shown to protect the innocent. The speech was met with applause and cheers, even from species far beyond the immediate system. Some were inspired, some skeptical, but all understood that humanity had set a new standard. Honor and courage must be defended, no matter the size or power of the one who displayed it. Meanwhile, Clara handed Alaris the crystal bird he had saved her with. "This belongs to both of us now," she said. Her small voice carried the weight of meaning no treaty or declaration could capture. It was a symbol of trust, of friendship, and of the bond that had grown between humans and Veyari. Alaris accepted it with a solemn nod, feeling the warmth of loyalty that had formed between their two species. As weeks passed, the Veyari rebuilt not only their homes, but also their confidence. Young Veyari trained alongside human instructors, learning tactics, piloting, and teamwork. It was not preparation for war, but preparation for courage, for the ability to protect others when needed. Stories of the Corin 7 incident were told and retold among Veyari children, always ending with the lesson: bravery is measured by the heart, not by size or strength. The galaxy began to take notice. Other species, once dismissive of the small and quiet Veyari, now treated them with respect. Trade flourished. Alliances were formed. Even those who had opposed Earth's decision to protect the Veyari quietly reconsidered, recognizing that courage could not be ignored. Alaris, standing once more on the cliff at sunset, watched fleets of Veyari ships glide across the sky, small but purposeful. They were no longer the species that hid at the edges of markets and cities. They were guardians, allies, and friends to humanity. And in their flight he saw not only survival but also promise, a promise that their bond would shape a brighter future. Clara, laughing with a group of young Veyari children, called out to Alaris, "Come see, we made a new game about protecting each other." She ran toward him, the crystal bird swinging from her hand. It was a simple game, but it carried the weight of real courage, teaching trust, teamwork, and bravery. Dr. Hale watched quietly from a distance, smiling. He understood that this was bigger than research or politics. It was about a lesson that transcended species, that compassion, courage, and protection could change the galaxy. Humanity had made a choice, and in doing so, they had shown that honor is earned not only in victory, but in the defense of the vulnerable. As the sun set over the crystal cities, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter. Across the galaxy, tales of a tiny feathered species and a single human child who inspired an entire race became legend. It was remembered as the moment when loyalty and bravery reshaped history, when the courage of a few led to unity among many, and somewhere, deep in the memory of every Veyari and every human who had witnessed it, the lesson remained clear. Protect those who show courage, honor those who act selflessly, and never underestimate the power of a single life to change the future. The galaxy had witnessed something extraordinary. A child had been saved, a species had been honored, and humanity had declared that courage, no matter the form it takes, would always be recognized. In the quiet night, Ilaris held the crystal bird to the sky, and Clara smiled beside him. Together they watched the stars, knowing that their bond was unbreakable. The story of protection, bravery, and friendship would live on forever. The end. The story of Corin 7 spread like fire across the galaxy. Within hours, the footage of the Veyari shielding the human child appeared on news channels, networks, and personal devices. Billions watched the scene, a small feathered alien trembling but unyielding, standing between a helpless girl and a weapon meant to end her life. On Earth, families gathered around screens. Parents held their children closer as they watched. Soldiers, politicians, and ordinary citizens all felt the same rising emotion, respect mixed with fierce gratitude. Humanity had always valued loyalty and bravery, and now they saw both in a species long ignored by greater powers. In the chambers of the United Earth Council, leaders debated the meaning of the event. Some argued it was only a single act by a handful of Veyari, not enough to shape policy. Others disagreed strongly. Councillor Amelia Rhodes stood and addressed the hall with steady conviction. "Every species is tested at unexpected moments," she said. The Veyari did not hesitate. They saw a human child in danger and they risked their lives without thought of reward. That speaks not just of individuals but of values rooted deep in their people. If such courage goes unanswered, then we humans are unworthy of calling ourselves honorable. Her words carried weight and many nodded. For humanity, children were the heart of their civilization. Anyone who protected a human child was considered family. Meanwhile, the Veyari themselves were unsettled. Their merchants and travelers received sudden attention wherever they went. Strangers approached them with thanks. Some species mocked them, saying they had acted foolishly, throwing themselves into a fight they could not win. But the Veyari did not see it that way. Ilaris, the silver-feathered Veyari who had been wounded in the attack, was recovering in the medical bay of Corin 7. Dr. Hale visited often with Clara. The little girl would sit by his side, telling him stories in her small, bright voice. Ilaris listened with patient eyes, sometimes smiling, sometimes blinking away pain. To him it was simple. A child must never be harmed, no matter whose child it was. Yet not everyone in the galaxy shared this view. In the dark corners of space, the raiders who had failed their mission gathered again. Their pride had been wounded. To be stopped not by human soldiers but by weak feathered things was an insult they could not accept. Their leaders promised revenge. This time, they would strike directly at the Veyari to remind them of their place in the order of things. On Earth, intelligence networks intercepted whispers of this plan. Human admirals and generals met in private. The question was clear. Should humanity involve itself in defending the Veyari? They were not part of any human alliance, nor had they requested protection. But emotion burned strong. Humanity did not easily forget debts, especially ones written in sacrifice. In schools across Earth, children drew pictures of feathered beings standing beside human kids. Social networks filled with messages of solidarity. Protect the Veyari became a rallying cry, painted on banners and spoken in assemblies. The voice of the people was clear. Gratitude must be shown in action, not only in words. Clara herself became a symbol. In interviews, her small voice described how the Veyari had lifted her up, how they had shielded her when she was too afraid to move. Her simple words carried more power than speeches. When she said, "They saved me because they are good," the galaxy listened. The United Earth Council held a final vote. After long debate, the decision was made. Earth would declare the Veyari under official human protection. This meant any attack on them would be treated as an attack on humanity itself. It was a bold move, one that shook the halls of the Galactic Council where many species held power. Some alien leaders scoffed. They accused humans of arrogance, claiming they had no right to shield another species. But others, silently watching, felt a new respect. Humanity was known for its fierce defense of its own kind. Now they had extended that defense beyond themselves to those who had shown loyalty first. Back on Corin 7, the Veyari delegation received the message. At first, they could not believe it. Why would a mighty race with fleets and armies tie its honor to theirs? When Ilaris heard the news, he lowered his head in quiet wonder. "We only did what was right," he whispered. Dr. Hale answered with a firm voice. "And that is why we will never let you stand alone." From that day forward, the fate of the Veyari and humanity became linked. The galaxy watched closely, some with admiration, others with anger. The raiders prepared their revenge while human fleets prepared their defenses. But for the moment, in the quiet chambers of the medical bay, Clara handed Alaris her crystal bird and said, "Now it belongs to both of us." And across the stars history shifted, shaped by the courage of the small and the gratitude of the strong.